Put that coffee down.
I'm not here to waste your time, okay? I certainly hope you're not here to waste mine. So I'm gonna keep this short.
Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
The most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
Coffee's for closers only.
Well, hello there, friend. Welcome back to the Behind Your Back podcast with me, Bradley Hartman. This podcast will talk about leadership, personal productivity, time management, and the craft of selling in the construction industry. And I'm thrilled to bring to you today my conversation with Mr. Mike Weinberg. And he, in my mind, is one of the foremost teachers and exemplars when we think about the craft of selling and delivering value first. So if you are unfamiliar with Mike Weinberg, I'm thrilled because what we're going to be talking about here today is really going to introduce you to some of his ideas, and you will have a new person in your life that can help you improve sales leadership, sales management, and if you're an individual contributor, your own personal sales improvement. Mike is the best-selling author of 3 Amazon #1 bestsellers. I own all 3 of them. I'm looking at them right now. New Sales, Simplified, Sales Management, Simplified, and Sales Truth. Again, for all of these, I would recommend them to a friend. For $50, you are going to be getting an incredible amount of information and insights and recommendation and advice to help you be better. And on this episode, we talk about some of the recommendations Mike has for selling in an environment where sellers temporarily, for sure, have all the leverage and price is no object. We talk about the need to consistently prospect even in these good times, knowing that things will change in the long run. I read one of my favorite passages of any sales book about annuity-based account management, which Mike articulated extremely well in his book, Sales Management Simplified, and has really changed the way that I think about how we work with clients. We also talk how leaders can best position successful salespeople and have them make that transition to sales management, which is an entirely different role altogether. We've talked about in the past. We go into a little bit deeper here, and we talk about much, much more. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Mike Weinberg. So Mr. Mike Weinberg, welcome to the show.
Bradley, I can't wait to do this.
Yeah, well, I know you're extremely busy, and I'm listening to your podcast. I've got all 3 of your books here in front of me. And you've provided so much value to me over the years, just with the content you're putting out. Appreciate you making time for this. And I thought we could just jump right in because right now in the lumber and building material world and construction in general, we are living in some bizarro times. And right now we're in this unique environment where the sellers really have all the leverage. Having inventory on the ground is differentiation. And for sales professionals that generally have to work really hard to drive revenue and new sales and all the things that you talk about, actually, that's not really happening right now. So I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on what recommendations might you have, understanding that everything is cyclical, on how people might think about the time we're in now in sales, and what's going to happen in the future.
Okay. First of all, it's a huge question, and I can't wait to dive in. And honestly, as we were discussing in the pre-show when we were chatting, I think you said it's been 4 decades since we've been in this situation. Well, I've only been in sales and business for 3 decades, so I'm making this up as we go, right?
Sure.
But before we even attempt to tackle that, first I have to say you are owed nothing. Deliver value first, Bradley Hartman. In fact, you used the value word in the intro there, and I'm so honored to visit with you and your audience. I just have a ton of respect, and thanks for having me on.
Sure.
And when you said I got to deliver value, I know it's like you preach it every day. Deliver value first. So good to be here. I honestly am trying to figure out how to approach coaching sales leaders, because that's a lot of my business, and salespeople in this bizarre, unique environment. I really haven't been in business in a high inflation period, and I have not been in a situation where there was incredible scarcity of material.
Right.
And I have this situation. I know a lot of your audience, right? They're in dealers and distributors, and I spent a lot of time in that world. In construction equipment and other more capital goods, not as much in such a consumable type of business, but sure. I can imagine what's going on is similar, where there are inventory shortages, prices are going up. There are a lot of salespeople who are going to make a lot of money, even if they don't get out of bed on time in the morning, which is concerning to everybody. And I know, and let me just say this for everyone's sake. I'm a sales guy.
Yep.
First and foremost, I'm a sales guy. I'm a sales hunter. I'm pro sales, and I want salespeople to make a ton of freaking money. That's why we do what we do. I am all for that. Period. New paragraph. However, comma, we need to earn it. And we're in some really interesting times where we have the control. We have time of possession. We have the ball. We are fighting for inventory. I don't have all of my thoughts well formulated yet, but there are a few things I think that will come out as we have this dialogue today. And the first one is you cannot stop selling and being proactive. And I know as you and I were kind of planning out where we might go with this conversation, I think we're going to get there, because the temptation for most sellers is to go into cruise control / complacency mode.
Yep.
Because, hey, we're going to make it big and we're going to do great. So why don't I ease up? What I'm going to say is what my mentor, Donnie Williams, taught me. The sales car has one pedal, and it's the skinny one on the right, and we better keep it floored.
Right.
So while we have the leverage, we should take advantage of it in a high integrity way. I'm not talking about manipulation or putting people in an unfair situation. But I think the situation we're all dealing with in your industry is ahead of it, because everybody knows about lumber and lumber prices. It's been a headline story for months.
Right.
But in the general sales population, they're now realizing, we have price increases to deal with. And we're having the conversation about how you pass those along. And you do it with the clear understanding that it creates some discomfort. But you have no choice. This is reality. It's a marketplace. It's supply and demand. There's scarcity. You don't necessarily set prices. So you need to be as proactive as possible. The thing I would say to the salespeople, as we have the control, while we're going to make a lot of money and we have leverage we haven't had, we better at the same time raise our empathy and our EQ and really connect with our customers and our prospects, because they will remember these days.
Yes.
And one of the big lessons I've been taught by people who have survived good times and bad is everybody remembers who was there and how they were treated when things were challenging. So you are being evaluated every second. And if you come across as a self-focused, money-grabbing person who's taking advantage of the unique position you're in, it's going to cost you later, and people will remember that. And it's a long life, and reputations are really important. So I'll pause there, because I'll let you guide us and dive in. But I'm still figuring this out, because I haven't been in this situation. I'm dealing with pricing in my own industry. I have more demand for in-person speaking than I can conceivably meet. And I'm trying to wrestle through, Bradley, what's reasonable to charge, because the marketplace says I should charge more. I can't meet demand.
Right.
At the same time, I want to be reasonable. That I'm not putting myself in a weird position as a guy who's gouging or who's taking advantage. But at the same point, I've earned it, right? I have the relationships. I built the brand. It's the time that I should be making more profit now. So I hope that's helpful as a start to this very interesting conversation.
It is. Well, you touched on something really important. And me coming from the building background, we recently had a national buyer on from one of the top home building companies in the country. And he said, it's like, we have, there's a short list of names that were going in that we thought these were long-term relationships, and they turned extremely transactional. And then heard the same thing where a custom builder, he said, the sales guy actually said to me, he says, well, you gotta keep in mind, this is kind of payback for the Great Recession. When builders had, we all went through that. He's like, it's a weird thing for sellers to say. You talk a lot about, and actually I was just listening to the second time, a recent podcast episode you recorded on accountability. And I think as we think about accountability now, one thing that I've heard from several folks is they said, for the second year in a row as a sales leader, I've struggled with goals and accountability, because when the pandemic hit, a lot of the goals that we had kind of went away because we had 90 days of uncertainty. And then it came roaring back. And now the goals we've set, the guys haven't even gotten out of bed in the morning and they already crushed the goals. So how do we manage accountability in this environment?
Okay, well, this is a fantastic conversation. It's such a big topic. In fact, I could argue that the one-on-one meeting between a manager and a salesperson, specifically for accountability, is the highest impact sales management activity. And usually it doesn't get done. So one, accountability conversations have to happen. Two, I get that we're in this crazy time and a lot of people are exceeding the goals that we set, which are totally inappropriate now for the market that we're operating in.
Yeah.
So there's no rule that you can't adjust the goals. But let me throw this challenge out to everyone, whether we're talking to the salesperson from a self-accountability perspective, because again, it's a long life and you have a long career ahead of you. So let's maximize now. So what I would advocate is part of what we need to start measuring and paying attention to is not just sales results, because as you articulated, Bradley, we're going to achieve those results regardless of necessarily of our effort.
Yeah, exactly.
Why don't we hold people accountable for creating new opportunities, for cross-sell victories where you have certain types of accounts that cherry pick your line and we have growth opportunity? Why don't we measure how many we're penetrating with bigger cross-sell opportunities? Why don't we talk about opening new logos, creating new builder relationships and measure that? Because what I'll say is the seeds you plant right now during this unique time, you will water and fertilize them. And some of them will sprout up later. Because if you're really measuring, and I do a lot of work with some of the big manufacturers like John Deere or Mack Trucks or Vermeer, you know what they care about? They care about market share. So it's great that the tide is rising, but are we getting our unfair share? So all that to say is we must hold salespeople accountable because sales is about results. And if you let the culture slip, and we're not about new and about more, it all becomes about service and fulfilling the orders, which is not that hard to do, right? Except for the lack of inventory.
Sure.
We're not getting the attitude and behavior. So there's a lot of places we could go in terms of targeting, but I think we have to hold people accountable for proactive sales behavior. And sometimes that means cross-selling, and sometimes it means prospecting and new accounts. But here's what we're trying to do. We want to get as much of the pie as we can today, but let's think long-term. This is not going to last forever. Right. Friends, I want everyone to hear me on this. Let me get dead serious with you salespeople. Yeah. I've done a lot of work in the mortgage space. Okay. When the refi booms are happening and rates are going down, all the mortgage people are making gazillion dollars.
Yeah.
And when that was happening, I was brought in to do some training and coaching. And one of my messages was, this is all great, but it's going to end. And rates are going to tick up. And you know what's going to happen? Everyone and their mother who sells mortgages is going to be out looking to get purchase business because refis are going to go away. And a very small handful of loan officers listened. And during boom times, even though they were crazy busy with refinancing, they went out and reestablished relationships with new realtors and new referral sources. So they were in position A when the market turned. They already had the relationship with the realtors who could send them purchase business when everyone else was just starving because it dried up overnight. And what you don't know, because none of us are prophets and we don't have a crystal ball, you don't know where this is going. So all of that is just the big brother with gray hair telling some of you people who are crushing it right now, don't get complacent. You have a long life. I just put 3 kids through college. I'm through 11 of 12 years writing big checks for college tuition. That's a lot of money. So yes, maximize today, but there is sales behaviors we needed to put in place to ensure success for a long term. So I know I threw a ton out there, but yeah. Let's go specifically where you want to dive in a little deeper.
Yeah, I think you brought up something really powerful is what are we really measuring? And a conversation I've been having more is let's talk about wallet share. You talk about cross-selling. Let's talk about market share. And the most common response I get when we're talking to clients or prospects, I'll ask is, what sort of market share do you think you have right now? The most common answer is, it's a great question. I don't know. And you're like, well, there are ways to measure this, right? But I think as we think about accountability here, you said something as really powerful. And I'll kind of tee this up in 2 ways here. Sometimes my poor podcast host specialty is offering up 2 questions at the same time.
I love it. Go ahead.
I love it. You had said accountability trumps coaching. And I want you to kind of pin that for a moment, because what I've found is when we have the meeting, we're talking about, as you describe or prescribe as well, results, pipeline activity. I have found often when I'm helping my clients, I kind of drift away and I end up doing some deal strategy and I end up doing coaching and I end up doing planning, and I'll walk away and I'm like, I did something wrong. And it wasn't until I think it was episode 8 of your podcast where you're like, let's separate these. So I'll circle this back up in a question. Can you touch upon accountability versus why accountability trumps coaching and how we need to kind of segment these for very specific purposes for sales leaders?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I get both questions. I'm tracking with you.
Okay, thank you.
So, and it's 2 separate conversations. One, accountability is really important. And coaching is really important.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that most of us in sales leadership default to coaching
Yes.
and trying to help everybody do their jobs, which is great. And we should. I'm not against that. But accountability is what suffers. And my simple prescription is that you need to separate those meetings.
Yeah.
Because something really powerful and magical and wonderful happens when, whether it's weekly or monthly, and some of that depends on the sales cycle.
Sure.
But in a very short 10-minute meeting, and it's funny, I'm very conscious not to pump my podcast on someone else's podcast, but you brought it up. That episode,
Sure.
that episode is really, it unpacks the most popular chapter in my sales management book. It's the one-on-one meeting. I think it's either episode 8 or 9 for the Sales Management Simplified podcast. We need to hold our people accountable. And what I advocate there is that very short meeting that you could do in about 10 minutes where you review very quickly the results.
Yep.
And let me talk about results for a second, because this ties in both when things are terrible and when they're awesome, like they are now in your world. I had sales managers a year ago asking me, how do I hold my people accountable? We're in the middle of this pandemic. No one's buying anything. What do I do? Everyone's freaked out. People at home, elder care issues, kids aren't in school. No one, customers won't see my people. How do I hold them accountable? And I said, it's very simple. You do it relatively speaking. Where do they rank on the team? And in the month, like last May was a brutal month for many industries. Well, where did they stand versus everybody else? How many opportunities did they create? What did they sell? Well, I would tell you the same truth applies today in the boom that your industry's in. It's relative.
Yeah.
Are you gaining more share? Are you gaining more accounts? Are you more above goal than your peers? So you can still create competition and accountability in both good and bad times. Putting that thought aside, to your main question, we need a coach and we need to do accountability. What I advocate is separating those meetings, because as I was saying, something powerful really happens when a sales manager sits with a salesperson. And even if it's 10 minutes, and it could be on Zoom or it could be face-to-face, we put that salesperson in the hot seat and we shine the light of truth on their actual results, which is yesterday's news. What did you sell last month? What did you sell last quarter? What did you close last week versus your goal and versus the team? And let that sit there and let them rationalize if they didn't hit their number. And then we move into the pipeline, which is, okay, we can't do anything about yesterday's results because that's old news.
Right.
I care a lot about this week, this month, this quarter's results. Show me what you're working. What deals are we quoting? What new people are you pursuing? What's in, and every industry uses the word pipeline differently, right? But what's in the pipe? What did you add to it? What did you advance? Is it healthy? Is it moving? Because I care a ton about your future results. And what tends to happen is the manager gets in this conversation with the salesperson, and once they get to the pipeline, then they start strategizing. Well, what about this account? What if you approach it like this?
Yes.
And my coaching to the leaders is hold off on that, because when you turn this 10-minute meeting into an hour coaching session, the impact of the salesperson being on the hot seat and having the light of truth shined on their performance goes away. We want the salespeople to feel a little anxiety. And if you're a salesperson listening to this, you want a sales manager who is laser focused on your goals and results, because you want them holding your feet to the fire, because you want to make more money. And this meeting, when it's short, it's very impactful. So you got results, you got pipeline. And then the third part, when necessary, and only when necessary, we ask a salesperson about activity, because nobody really wants to be asked about that. But if you start with results and then you look and they're not there and the pipeline is weak and there's not new opportunities being created, not enough quoting, however you track pipeline, the sales manager has no choice left at that point. But now, hey, listen, I'm not cool with you failing. Your results are weak. Your pipeline's no good. Why don't you show me where you're spending your time? Grab your target account list and grab your calendar. What are you doing? I hate to ask you about this, but something's broken here. And when you use that progression that my mentor taught me, results, pipeline, activity, and you do it in a 10-minute meeting, everybody loves it. No one can accuse you of being a micromanager, right? And you really are refocusing people when you laser focus. And then schedule a separate meeting to do coaching, or do that in the team meeting. And that way, that little meeting is really special and set apart. And the salesperson knows, my manager and this culture is very serious about me hitting my goals and driving results. And it's transformative when we get that meeting right.
It's really well said. And I realized as you were talking, I try to be a very good student, read chapter 20 or the one-on-one meeting, results, pipeline. I realized in that pipeline, the risk is when they talk about a deal, there's a story he goes down. I jump in, I want to help. I was like, I think that's the linchpin there. You can avoid that. You can get in and out in 15 minutes.
That's really well said. Yeah. And that's what I observed, because I've helped I don't even know what the number is, 50 companies implement, personally, and then who knows how many thousands from reading the book, but
Sure.
I've probably seen this implemented in 50 different organizations in all different industries, from tech to distribution to defense to consulting and dealerships. It's transformative.
Yeah.
And what's weird is I take no credit for this. Like, I didn't invent that results pipeline activity. I took it from my mentor, right, and made it popular. But he's the one that was a genius because he was my manager, and this is how he managed me. It's transformative when you get that meeting right. But in the companies where I've watched this implemented, and everyone raves about what happens when you implement this formula, the people who struggle with it or don't get the impact are all the ones who dilute the power of that 10-minute meeting by stretching it into a half hour or an hour and doing the coaching, because then the salesperson leaves the meeting and forgot that, oh, I better get my acting gear. I'm going to, so that's that temptation, because we all want to coach and we want to help them, which we should. And I'm just saying, schedule that meeting for the next day. So
guilty as charged. And you hit the word that I wrote down. I was driving my car. I pulled off the side. I wrote the word dilution down. And I'm like, I am personally responsible. I have been. I will not in the future. I can't dilute the power of this meeting. So I love that. I wonder, one of the most powerful, I think, paragraphs you've written that made an impact for me that I see constantly with our clients. And I wonder if I could just read this real quick from your book.
Yeah, now I'm scared. I can't wait to hear I have no idea where we're going. So this is going to be great.
It was page 64, Sales Management Simplified. Why would a salesperson who is fat, dumb, and happy, managing a healthy portfolio or book of business, and very much enjoying the living that portfolio throws off, not overservice those existing accounts? It's not any more complex than that. If you get paid the same for babysitting current customers as you would for doing the heavy lifting to acquire new ones, where would you spend your time? So, Mike, with that context, I was having this conversation with a president recently, and he said, well, isn't it inevitable that we are going to have young, hungry sales professionals who are looking for new sales opportunities? They will succeed, they will land some new accounts, and they will naturally, human nature, they will begin to just focus on those larger accounts, and then they will kind of shift in that annuity-based mindset. And he's like, isn't that inevitable? And my thought was, I want to put my head through the drywall, and I want to kind of hopefully explain to why this isn't inevitable. And I was struggling to articulate it really well, and I thought, Mike's going to be on the show next week. I'm going to tee this up for him to help me and my client.
It's one of the toughest challenges we face, because there's multiple sides to this argument.
Right.
And we don't want to jack with how someone's earning a living, because in the dealer world, and I see this in equipment and other places, you work so hard to get the relationship. Correct. And you invest so much as a new customer to overserve them, to keep them happy and keep them buying from you, that you feel like, as the seller, you deserve this long-term reward.
Right.
And the annuity stream that follows from this massive account, who now all you're doing is taking their reorders and loving on them and protecting them from the enemy that's trying to come snatch it away.
Right.
So as a sales guy, I totally get that. Mm-hmm. The problem is we plateau.
Yes.
And because our life gets filled with account management burden, and because compensation drives complacency, right? I said that, right? The first four letters are the same: compensation, complacency. Then that's the reality, that the plan can cause us to go into account management and overprotection mode, which is really, really dangerous. So it is inevitable, if we continue to pay people the same rate to overserve and babysit their favorite customers, even though some of that may be deserved, it's inevitable that they're going to default to protecting and serving those customers, as opposed to going to create new ones. And the challenge is, though, what do you do at that point?
Right.
And how do you do good account management to create accountability and keep a high performance culture, allowing your salespeople to be rewarded for the hard work they've done to build the business, but stopping them from living in babysitting, complacency, territory caretaker mode, where they're going to live the rest of their life off of what they sold for a few years and then go on cruise control for the next decade, because that's not good for anybody, right? So we could talk about options. It's a big can of worms to open, right? Because you got to be very careful when you mess with somebody's compensation. But in general, my pet peeve is commission annuities and commission that's really not earned anymore, because it's going to come whether you get out of bed in the morning or not. And if it's not driving the behavior, we have a problem. So there are fixes to this. I'll just throw this one option out.
Sure.
And again, I'm a sales guy and I'm pro sales. I think there's a way to tinker with the compensation plan that after a certain amount of time, the ongoing commissions for an existing account, if we're just in babysitting and order taking mode, must reduce.
Yes.
So we don't continue to foster complacency, but we allow our salesperson to make that money up and even more money by overcompensating them and rewarding them even greater for bringing in net new business. And maybe that's a cross sell of a new product line, or maybe that's bringing in new. And I'm not saying it's easy to figure this out accounting wise. It's not, right? There's a lot of complexities in the compensation, but we want compensation plans that drive the desired behavior and results. And if our comp plan, like in insurance, right? An insurance agent works great for 10 years, busts his or her butt, builds a book of business, and then lives off that forever. If that's what you're trying to create in your company, just understand you're going to have to endlessly add salespeople,
right?
Because you're never going to keep growing if everybody's fat, dumb, and happy, as you read in that chapter.
I think the phrase that jumped out to me was foster complacency. And are we aware of that? Do we want that? And I guess at the end of the day, do we have the conviction to want to change it? And maybe I'll throw this out to you. I'm going to preface this by saying this is potentially a very stupid idea, but it's one that I've been toying with one of our clients, kind of thinking about the zero-based accounting budget, where at the end of the year, we're just not adding 2.5% for inflation or whatever that number is. When you go back to zero and you have to make your case to argue why you need this money for marketing or sales and entertainment, whatever that might be. And I was just kind of thinking out loud to my client. I said, what if there's a big pot theory? What if we did zero-based account management, where you're taking every account and you're putting them in a big pot, and you need salespeople to defend why they have the relationship, if they're growing it or if they're just babysitting it. And he paused and he said, "Are you serious?" I said, "I'm not sure if I am." I'm sure there's unintended consequences there. And he said, we had a fun time with that. As I say that, what comes to mind? And I'm perfectly comfortable if you're like, yeah, it's a stupid idea, and here's why.
No, I love, you sent me that question about a week ago and thinking of things we might talk about. And I'm like, I can't wait to hear him talk about this because I'm not exactly sure what he means. I think it's intriguing. I think what you're saying is, to use the zero-based budget analogy, at the end of the year, you might have to have a conversation with everybody and go, okay, why do you deserve to keep this account?
Yeah.
What value are you adding? And what are your plans here to grow it so that you're truly earning salesperson money?
Exactly.
Because, right, let's just talk reality here, Bradley. A lot of what happens in sales, once it gets to the annuity phase, is we morph from sales hunters to caretakers, and we babysit and we overserve, and we end up doing effectively a customer service person's job,
right?
But earning 3, 4, 5, 10 times that amount of money that the customer service person earns because we sold the account in the first place. So compensation is a huge topic, and it's dangerous to tackle it. I would just challenge the folks that are hearing this. It's worth taking a look at it, because if you have complacent salespeople, you've got to start by looking at the compensation plan. And my one tip to owners and execs and sales leaders is this: if you're considering redesigning or tweaking the compensation plan, get input from your best people. Don't do this in a vacuum. You're just too much risk here. You don't want to lose your A players. You want their involvement. The best people want to be challenged and held accountable. And they understand that this is a business and you cannot pay them exorbitant fee for doing nothing.
Yeah.
The reason they let us make so much money as salespeople is because we bring in new business. That's what pays for it. But no one would let us make the kind of money you make on real commission if you just sat around and wrote orders. That's right. We're not like waiters at a short order diner, right? We're supposed to be consultative, value creating, business developing salespeople. That's the job. That's why they pay us. Yeah. So let's earn it. Yeah. So my tip would be bring in some top people to help you as you tinker with the plan.
Oh yeah. I think it's fantastic advice. Mike, if you can, I've got, I think, 2 more questions for you. One is from a friend of the show, dear friend of mine, someone you've collaborated with in the past. And actually, he was one of our first guests on the show several years ago. And I always ask kind of a book question, and he gave me Sales Management Simplified. So kind of bringing it full circle to Mr. Tim Rethlake. His question was, we often see a star sales contributor be promoted to sales management. It often doesn't end well. What can a business owner do to make this transition smoother, both for the company and for the individual, and to increase the probability of success?
Wow. Tim, first of all, Tim, you're awesome. And thanks for recommending my book to Bradley. This is a really big question. I think I'd start with my answer is going to be a difficult one to start with. We better make darn sure the person that we're taking as a top producing salesperson and putting them in management is really a fit for management versus being an individual contributor.
Yeah.
Because the only thing similar in the world, in the job between sales manager and salesperson is the word sales.
Yeah.
One person wins by being selfish. The other one wins through his or her people. Like they're night and day jobs, and it's very hard to do both, right? I'm not a fan of the player coach selling sales manager. That's like schizophrenia in the making.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing that's really helpful, and it's hard in a smaller organization, but you have to take the accounts away from the salesperson that you turn into manager. It's very hard to do both jobs. And if you have a sales manager who ends up competing with his or her own people, or who has significant income, and this happens in the mortgage business, which we referred to earlier. Typically in a mortgage office, the owners or the managers are the two top producers. Most of their income comes from their own book of business. So where do you think they default? They default to paying attention to their own business, their own accounts.
Yeah.
Same thing happens in sales management. If you leave your manager managing some really key customers, that's a very big distraction where they're focused on that as opposed to leading the people, holding them accountable, driving the team forward, recruiting, all the key sales management functions. So that's one of the challenges. So I'd make sure the person's the right fit and that their ego is not so big that they can't get out of their way where they have to be the hero. And that's a whole bigger topic that we're not going to get into today.
Yeah.
But a lot of sales managers want to be the hero instead of focusing on making heroes of their salespeople. So we got to make sure the person's motivation and ego is right.
Yeah.
We need to set them up to succeed by not asking them to do a lot of sales things. If you have enough salespeople to manage, it's a full-time job. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world. So let's not burden them with extra stuff. And along those lines, I'd say to the owner or the executive to help the sales manager get off to a good start is don't bury them with all kinds of non-sales leadership crap. Let them lead the team, work with their people, get in the field, do team meetings, do accountability, coach, recruit. That's what moves the needle in sales. That's what drives the sales culture. So stop dragging your sales manager to every little planning meeting or turning their job into an operations administrative job, which drains their energy and keeps them from leading the team. So I hope some of that is helpful or useful.
Yeah. Getting him involved in the party planning committee because everybody likes him and everybody knows him. Probably not the best move there. No, I think that's really well said. One of his last questions here, and again, I realize this is I know you're a Seinfeld fan, a George Costanza style. This is a pretty big matzo ball here, but I want to ask you anyway.
Okay, baby.
Fascinated, right?
Summer of George. Summer of George. Bring it on.
Me and a big wheel of cheese out by the pool. So here's my question to you. Take this any way you want. Whose four faces would be on your sales training Mount Rushmore?
Wow. I haven't given this one thought. I don't know. I could put four on there. In my industry, there are so many people I respect. I hesitate to put them up there. I mean, there's the guys I've led the outbound conference with. In fact, they're there this week right now going through the conference. I backed out because I have so much going on and I just wanted to focus. But Anthony Iannarino, I think, is like the smartest guy in our industry. And I mean, I had him write the foreword to two of my books. And he's the guy I go to when I need some sales advice. Jeb Blunt is brilliant and prolific as an author, and especially on prospecting and objections. I mean, he's so good. So there are people that are not as necessarily well known because their books haven't been as big as a guy named Dave Curlin out of Boston, who's got Baseline Selling and he's got the Objective Management Group assessments. He's been influential in my career. There's so many. Jill Conrath, probably the most successful woman in this industry who I just have
she's great.
Tons of respect for. Like there are so many people. It's hard for me to create a Mount Rushmore. I could probably come up with 30 people that I would stick up there.
Well, and I think your humility shines through there, but I also say is just another way that you add value. And this is not true, as you know, of a lot of folks they're running their own business. They're largely concerned about self-promotion is, I'm not sure. I think I was following Iannarino before you, but you are constantly referencing them where you go to and shining a light on them And that has just grown. And I've just,
That's
behind
cool.
me, I've got their books and I read and trying to improve. So that list is great.
First of all, they're good people, right? And we like each other. So it's helpful. And we're competitors. There's times, recently Jeb and I were going for the same thing. It happens.
Sure.
But we also refer each other, and they're all good and they're all really talented. The pie is really big.
Yes.
And there are lots of people that are good at helping people in sales, and it's fun to share the opportunities. I am, and I'm not saying this to brag or I'm in a weird situation because the books have been successful. I get more leads than I can meet. And one of my joys is giving business away to some of the newer or younger guys in the industry who I have a ton of respect for. I've got a friend named Jeff Bajorek. I've handed him clients. In fact, I'm using him in one of my long clients where they need some sales management coaching. He's going to be at the event that you're coming to in Dallas because he's a huge golfer and he's doing a lot of sales management stuff. So it's fun to also set some other guys up for success and hand over leads and make sure that they're delivering value for these companies as well. Because everybody wants more sales. Mm-hmm. And I'm blessed. Bradley, this was not my plan. I did not have a life plan or a vision that said, you're going to have 3 best-selling books, one of which is, becomes kind of legendary, which is mind-blowing to me. I didn't set out to do this. So I'm just blessed and thankful, honestly, and humbled and surprised. And I want to be a good steward of this platform and make a big impact. And at the same time, maintain some semblance of a life, right? Because it can't work 24 hours a day, although there's enough work to do it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
No, that's well said. And again, LinkedIn and kind of Twitter saw Jeff's name, started following him. So, and again, I think for folks that are listening to this that might not be to date fully invested in kind of their own training and new ideas and challenging themselves to be better, following you on Twitter, connecting on Instagram, listening to your podcast, all of those are just easy ways where you can have someone else. And again, you're going to find some guys you resonate more with than others, but you have been very, I think, gracious in passing that on. I think you set this up for a great way to close. You are doing you can course correct here. I don't want to screw up the name here. I believe it's Supercharge Your Sales Leadership. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So you're coming to Dallas. I saw that. And I saw the one where you did Atlanta. And I have a client in Atlanta. And I thought about doing that. And then I saw Dallas pop up. So we've got a small LBM crew coming. Right now it's 4. I've got about 4 other invitations. I'm trying to bring a crew to not only sharpen my own saw, but also hear a message that I firmly believe can help our clients and do that together. Would you mind sharing a little bit of context about that? I want you to plug your podcast. And again, you and I are going to be speaking at the same event, the FEI group, Roofing and Flooring, later this year. But yeah, if you want to hit upon the 4 Seasons event, Supercharge Your Sales Leadership in your podcast, please do that.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thanks for bringing it up. I love that you're coming to this event and it's fun. I've had other guys in our industry, right? Fellow sales gurus come to these and it's fun to have you. And I'm looking forward to introducing you to the attendees that'll be there and probably using you a little bit in that event. These have been the most satisfying and rewarding days of my entire career. I did not come up with this idea. My business partner, Shane, watched me lead a workshop at the Outbound conference where I had about 50 sales leaders jammed into a room talking about sales management simplified over a couple hours.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and goes, man, this is where you're at your best. And I've never seen people this energized. We need to do real events for sales leaders, just for sales leaders, managers, executives, CROs, sales ops leaders, frontline sales managers, VPs, and get them in a room and talk about the real challenges and teach through Sales Manager Simplified and let them share their experiences, their best practice, their challenges, and do Q&A and go through all the high value sales management activities. So we created this thing. We named it Supercharge Your Sales Leadership event, and it was outrageously successful. We did 3 of these before COVID.
Okay.
One at St. Louis. We do them all at premium venues. We wanted it's an experience because managers are tired and they're important and they're the key to leading. So we're not doing like little hotel ballrooms. Like the 3 events we have coming up. One's in Dallas in your world at the 4 Seasons in an unbelievable little room called the Pavilion. It's its own building right on the golf course. And then the next day we have a golf package. Some people want to come and stay and play golf. It's at the TPC. Right at Las Colinas where they held the Byron Nelson Classic all those years. So it's a full day in a room with probably 50 sales leaders focused on increasing sales management effectiveness. It'll be raw truth. It'll be blunt. It'll be brutal. There'll be interaction. I'll teach my ass off, but a lot of the value is going to come from the table discussion and hearing from other people. So that's day one, is a full day. And I mean full day. Like we start at 7:30 and we end at 6. And we do catered lunch, we do snacks, we do cocktails and hors d'oeuvres at the end of the day. Tons of interaction, lots of value. And everybody who comes to these events not only gets the ticket, they also get lifetime access to the Sales Management Simplified video coaching series,
Yes.
which is the biggest, best thing we ever produced. And it's Sales Management Simplified, what it would take me 2 days to teach in a workshop, but in a video course with this 70-page guidebook that comes with it. So
Awesome.
it's an enormous value. So we're doing 3. We booked 4, and thank God COVID is behind us, at least enough to do these kinds of meetings.
Right.
I want to be sensitive to your international audience and some pockets where
Yes,
COVID
of
is
course.
not behind us. But
That's true.
we're doing it's August 31st in Dallas.
Yep.
And in September, we're doing one at the Wrigley Field. And I'm a Cardinals fan, so this is going to be hard for me, but at Wrigley Field in the Cubs Conference Center.
That's awesome.
And the VIP package for that one includes a baseball game with me the night before at the Cubs and some fancy Chicago dinner. And then a full day, I think it's September 22nd or 23rd.
Okay.
And then in October, we're going back to my happy place, the Porsche Experience Center in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, yeah.
And they have an unbelievable conference center there. And then everybody gets hot laps in a Porsche on the track, and VIPs the next day get more time with me. And they also get to drive for a couple hours on the track. So MikeWeinberg.com/events.
Okay.
MikeWeinberg.com/events is where you can get more info. Thank you for letting me share about that. Those honestly have been the most fun, rewarding days of my career, because the sales leaders leave there so pumped. I mean, our net promoter score is like a gazillion, and people love those days. So I can't wait to have you there. So thank
Mike,
you.
I can tell you, I am extremely excited, and your podcast where you are delivering so much value. I have sent that to my clients, and I said, I need you to listen to this episode at this marker. And I think I need you to consider coming to this with me, and here's why. So we've got a small lumber and building material crew. I've got some invites out. So I'm thrilled for that. I would just close with, for any folks that I think the vast majority of listeners know of you, have some of your stuff. I have a very small roster of people in different domains in my life that I consider you're on my surrender roster. And that's when you make a recommendation, I just surrender any thought. I use my energy that I would say, oh, it's different for me. I'll tweak it. I'll make it better. I just surrender and I just do what I'm told. And I try to be a good student. And I do this very selfishly because I get results and my life is better and I achieve the things I want to. And I'll just close by saying you're on that list. And when it comes to kind of sales and sales management, I can't thank you enough. And again, I realize I've just been seeing all the bookings and things. Everyone's excited. So for speakers like us, there's a lot. You are on a whole different level than me. So I'm like, I can only understand all that you're dealing with. So for you making time for this was really special for me. So thank you. And I appreciate the insight for the audience.
That is really overly generous and emotional just hearing you say that. So thank you. Tons of respect for you. And I'm looking forward to spending time with you, not just in Dallas, but you need to coach me up for the event that I'm speaking at in your world at FEI. So
sounds good.
I look forward to getting some coaching from you there. And I wish you continued success because you're making a huge impact in your community. And I thank your listeners for the time invested here, right? Giving us their most precious resource, their time. And I wish them great success and tons of new sales. And my closing thought is do not let up. I get that it's good. I get the prices are going up. I get you're short on inventory. Go make the sales call. Mm-hmm. Go take someone else's business. Get aggressive. Be proactive, right? Drive new business, right? Take care of yourself and take care of your clients for the long term.
Love it. It's a great place to end. Thanks, Mike. All right, then. How did that go? What did you think of my conversation with Mr. Mike Weinberg? I didn't oversell it, did I? I don't think I did. Well, our goal here is to make this the best podcast you listen to. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas for future shows, any potential guests you'd like to hear from, and any sales fundamentals issues that you're dealing with your builders or people in your community. Feel free to email me directly at bradley@behindyourbacksales.com. Feel free to link up with me on LinkedIn or connect with me on Instagram at BehindYourBackCEO or on Twitter, look up Bradley Hartman. And if you did find this episode valuable with Mike Weinberg, please share it with your network and leave a review. Those mean more to us than you know. So with that, we're going to close out like we always do. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first.